Hi everybody, lovely to meet you. Thank you very much for having me here today. Right, I'm going to talk for a few minutes, but I don't want to take up too much time talking at you because I'm sure you'll have loads of questions. But I thought it might be helpful if I just give you an overview of where we are, what's coming next, and the sort of things we're keeping an eye on and thinking about to give you a bit of an inside track, because we know that what you're doing is really closely aligned to where we want to see farming go. So you are top VIP audience for this purpose, and we're really keen, before I say anything else, we are dead keen to know where you think we need to keep making tweaks to what we're doing, because we in no way think we get things right first time, and we know we haven't got everything right yet, and we're always keen to hear from experts like you about what we need to do to keep making this whole thing better. And when I say better, we're measuring that against three things. We want to have a positive impact on food production in this country, on farm productivity in this country, and also on the impacts of climate change, water quality, biodiversity, air quality in this country. And we want to do that all at the same time. And for that to be the case, what we do has to work in a farm business context, because if it doesn't work for farmers, it doesn't work at all. So it's very important that what we're doing, you can see making business sense, and that you can see it contributes to resilient businesses, resilient food production in the long term, and also these environmental outcomes. And we think there's an awful lot we can do that's in the sweet spot of all of those outcomes. So just for example, managing your soil in the way that was just being talked about, and your nutrients, saves the business money, makes it more resilient and profitable, and also is good for water quality and biodiversity and emissions, just for one example. So we're trying to do this in an incredibly challenging context. I know farming is always a challenging context, but right at the moment, it really is particularly difficult with all of the supply chain pressures, volatility in input and output prices, dealing with the impacts of climate change whilst simultaneously being blamed for it in many cases, and also we're bringing about the biggest policy change in at least a generation, and we're very well aware of that, and we take that responsibility extremely seriously and personally. And we are out and about a lot, me and my team, talking to folk like you to understand what's it going to take for this to actually work. And we know that historically, we have not earned the sector's trust and confidence in what we're doing. And we've made things too prescriptive, too inflexible, not workable enough on the farm. And unless we fix those things and provide services that you can have confidence in and trust, then you're not going to participate in our schemes, and we're not going to see the outcomes we want to see. So we're doing a range of things, but they're all about providing more flexibility, more trust and confidence, and a more business-like relationship between Defra's organisations and farmers, and helping to make food production and the environment more resilient. And you'll be aware of our schemes, but I want to give you a bit of an overview of where we are with each of them. So Sustainable Farming Incentive, that's our newest scheme. We had a pilot for that, and the pilot participants are now in their third year of their agreements, and I'm having a meeting with some of them tonight, actually, and I regularly talk to our pilot participants, and they tell us they can see we've been listening to them. And the scheme that we took into the pilot is quite different from the scheme that we now have live and in operation. That's because we learned a huge amount from those 800 and odd farmers. So that will be coming to a close this year, and we aim to provide a nice, smooth experience for people in the pilot to go back into the main scheme. We also had, as I'm sure you're aware, an early rollout version of the scheme last year with just a few actions in it. And we saw some uptake, but it was at the lower end of our projections, and it was not going to get us to where we want to get to, which is 70% of farms in schemes. And we learned through that early rollout and from feedback about it that we really needed to make the scheme much more flexible, so that now the offer that's available is much more flexible in terms of you being able to pick and choose which actions you want to do, how much of your land you want to do them on, and also you need to make it flexible within each action to make it much less prescriptive. So there is currently available the 2023 version of SFI, which we launched in September, and that has in it 23 actions, and you can pick and mix however much or little you want to do of each of those actions. You can have an SFI agreement alongside an existing agreement. You can amend your SFI agreement every year. We'll come back to that in a minute. And it's going a lot better. So in the first 4 months, just over 4 months, we've seen we're just nearly at 10,000 applications. We'll get there either today or tomorrow. We're seeing roughly 100 and odd a day still coming in. So that's the benchmark. The most popular scheme ever had 20,000 people apply for it in the first year. That was ELS. But as we all know, that was widely seen as not delivering the outcomes it was intended to deliver. The trick we've got to pull off with SFI is we've got to make it work, make it attractive, and also achieve the environmental impact and demonstrate that we're doing that. And that is a very difficult trick to pull off. It's never been pulled off before. So we don't underestimate the challenge, but we've already got 9,800 and something or other as of yesterday, and we'll get to 10,000 either today or tomorrow, covering 1.2 million hectares of land. And what we've got so far has an annual value of £190 million. So we're seeing some numbers now. And about 40% of those people weren't previously in schemes. They were just in BPS and not in schemes. And about 40, the rest are in schemes. About 40% are in CS and have SFI on the side. And the rest are either in ES or SFI pilot or some other scheme like that. So we're seeing a really good mix of people coming in for the first time and stacking SFI. So the flexibility is definitely working better for people. We're seeing tenants coming in. We're seeing a good range of types of farms coming in, sizes of farms, locations, but we keep a really beady eye on all of that because we want to make sure that it's working for everybody. And in particular, we keep an eye on, is it really working for tenants? We made SFI much more flexible for tenants, shorter agreement lengths, the ability to come in even if you haven't got proof that you're going to have management control, but you just expect to have it. Say you're on a rolling 1-year grazing licence on MOD land or a rolling tenancy, you can still come in. But we want to make sure we're actually seeing the tenants come in. We want to see the right spread of actions and people doing the sorts of things that we're expecting them to do. We don't want to see mainly people just coming in to do one action. We really want to see people taking a range of actions, and we're keeping an eye on all of that. But so far, so good. 10,000 at this point is good. That's higher than our mid-range projection for this point, and I'm happy with that, particularly as we can still see people coming in. But we're not there yet. We want to see 70% of land in schemes. We're roughly around 40 to 50% of land and 40 to 50% of farms. So we've got 4 years to get to 70%. And my neck's a little bit on the line as to whether we get there or not. But I need your help. So help us continue to make it better. Countryside stewardship, as you know, mid-tier has existed for some time. We've been making that simpler and better, and we've now got more than twice as many people in it as we had 3 years ago. And what we're going to do this year is we're going to offer all the actions in mid-tier and all the actions in SFI in one combined offer. So as of this year, you will not need to do a CS application and then a separate SFI application and have manage separate agreements in that way. It's clear that that's just unnecessarily complicated for people. It's unnecessarily complicated for us to deliver. It doesn't particularly add anything. We want to take the best of CS mid-tier, the best of SFI, and bring them together in a symphony of clarity, simplicity, straightforwardness, and workability so that it really works for you. And we'll do that from this summer. Higher tier will continue, but higher tier we will start offering on a rolling basis, like we do with SFI. So the combined offer will be on a rolling basis, quarterly payments all round, similar sorts of flexibility to the flexibility we see in SFI, more actions available on a 3-year basis if you want. Higher tier will continue broadly in its current form. It will be a competitive scheme for the highest ambition projects, and it will just be run on a rolling window. So instead of having this peak, which we have to manage, you can apply all year round, which we hope will help farmers and help us to increase our ability to take on more higher tier agreements. Then we've got HLS, and it's really important to mention HLS and ES because there are still several thousand people in those schemes. And until very recently, what those people were saying to us was, I just want to stay here and be secure in my agreement for the next 5 years. So we've been giving 5-year extensions. We're now seeing the tide turn and people in that scheme are saying, actually, I want to jump into the new offer. And we have been talking internally about how we can facilitate that in the best way. We've already done some things to help with that. So you can now exit your HLS at a time of your choosing, so you don't have to have a gap between your HLS and your new agreement. And we've made it possible, we've allowed you to do that and to have other agreements along the side. But those processes aren't working yet as smoothly as we would like or as quickly as we would like. And it's very important those people don't feel left behind because they are the earliest of early adopters and they're doing lots of ambitious things. So I want you to know we're on the case with that. And then finally, landscape recovery is a bespoke scheme for the most ambitious, larger scale projects. So we have small numbers of those. We have competitive rounds. We've just awarded another 30-odd contracts to go into project development, and we're really excited about those because most of them involve groups of farmers working together, which is exactly what we wanted to see, producing food and also taking a more conservational approach to the land and restoring rivers and woodland and land around and peat. So we will run another round of landscape recovery in due course, timing to be confirmed. So that's the schemes as they are now. We've also got a range of grants, as I'm sure you know, to cover slurry management, innovation, research and development, where we really want to get those innovative practices and technologies out of testing and feasibility study and into at-scale adoption, and in particular where they can really help with farm efficiency, reducing costs, reducing emissions, etc. So there will be further rounds of grants this year. There'll be small grants, there'll be more slurry management grants, there'll be more innovation grants, more productivity grants, more animal health and welfare grants, and some of the things that are new in there include solar on top of hen housing and cattle housing and also separately. So take a look at those. So that's a kind of broad set of things we're doing, but none of those work unless we really improve our services. And we are undertaking a really deep, extensive transformation here across all the Defra organisations, where we're trying to put in place a much more business-like way of interacting with you so that it's fair. You don't need to worry about getting penalised if you've made an honest mistake or you've tried your best but the weather didn't quite come right, so your cover crop didn't take, or whatever it is that's gone wrong. And now you'll be getting visits, not inspections, from our PA colleagues. And that's tiny word change, but it's very important, because what we're trying to do is move to a position where we are offering you advice and support so that you don't get into a situation where you've breached the rules. And this applies to regulation and schemes, rather than coming around with a clipboard and marking your homework on the expectation we're going to find something somewhere. And that originates in the design of the schemes, because if we say your border must be 2 metres exactly, then the RPA have to come and measure it with a ruler. And if it's not, then they have to fine you. So we have to make the schemes flexible, and then RPA colleagues and others make their controls flexible to match. And I'm well aware of the scepticism in the sector as to whether we can actually pull this off. I've seen many farmers pull some of the faces I'm seeing here, saying, oh yes, I'll believe that when I see it. Well, fine, but if it kills me, I'm going to make that happen. And it may well do, quite bluntly. I've been at this 4 years now. I did have brown hair before I started, but that's all gone now. That's all history. We are serious about this, and we are seeing a reduction in complaints about the way that we manage these controls, and we're starting to see positive feedback. The problem is, when someone has a good experience, they tend to assume it was a freak occurrence and keep it under their hat in case they jinx it. So you've got to get to the position where you don't think that. You go, oh yeah, they said they were going to do that. Maybe this is actually a thing. And we've got to get that quickly to happen, because it's one of the big barriers to people taking part in schemes or doing so at the level of ambition we want to see, is they're worried about doing it wrong. And particularly when we make it more flexible, they're worried we've got some kind of secret rules that we're going to use to catch you out. That is not what we're about, but I recognise it's going to take some time for you to see that play through. So, what's coming this year? We published a thing called an Agriculture Transition Plan update in January. Look that up if you want to see a bit more detail. And what we said we're going to do in 2024 and in 2025 is we're going to introduce 50 new actions that we haven't paid for before. And that covers a whole range of things, including no-till, precision techniques, which you will be interested in, I'm sure, peatland restoration, agroforestry, wider range of woodland options, a whole lot of stuff, much more for the moorlands. If any of you are farming on moorlands, I don't know. Much bigger offer there, better offer for grasslands. So there's 50 things coming. We've said we'll deliver as much as possible of that this year and make it available from this summer. We're also applying premium pricing to a subset of our actions. So the prices will just appear in the scheme higher than they were. And some of the ones that have really shifted include scrub, where we used to pay less than you get from BPS. It's now closer to 600 quid. And that's been a bugbear for a while from farmers, saying this is really good for wildlife, but what you do is treat it as a PIF, so I can't actually get any money for it. That's ridiculous. So now you can get a decent payment for that. And some of the measures relating to water quality will also attract premium prices. We've also increased the prices across the board for CS and SFI actions. We published information about that in January. And so what we think we've now got is a scheme where people are beginning to say, actually, I can see how I can make this work in my business because it's flexible, it's paying me a decent whack. There's new actions coming. If you're worrying about whether to go into SFI now or later, by the way, go now. There's no limit on what you can do in SFI at the moment. I don't know how long that will last, but it is the case right now. And once you've got an agreement, you've got an agreement. But at some point, we're going to hit the ceiling of the budget and someone's going to tell me that I'm not allowed to do that anymore. So have at it, please. You can add to your agreement later on your annual anniversary. And also, when these new actions come in the summer, you can just have a second agreement if you don't want to wait for your anniversary. So there really is no disadvantage to going in now, because you can start getting money, you can start getting paid, you can have at it, and then you can add more later. So new actions, premiums, we're going to have this combined offer that I mentioned so we can further simplify the service and make it easier for farm managers like you to get involved. We're going to increase access to higher tier agreements and actions, and we're looking to put more of the actions, make more of those actions that are in higher tier more widely available, and also increase our ability to get people into higher tier agreements, because that is much more of an involved process, but we know there's more demand than we can currently meet. We're going to carry on working on making it really straightforward for people in HLS agreements to move into the new agreements. We're going to have another round of landscape recovery. We're going to keep on keeping an eye on how these actions are working, because this move to making them more flexible is really tricky, because we've got to make it flexible enough that you can do what you want to do in a way that works for your farm, but not so flexible that basically you don't really have to do anything. We don't want that because then we'll be discredited and we won't be able to continue making the investment. So there are definitely 2 or 3 where I'm aware there are questions about exactly what's required here and is it really going to deliver the outcome. We don't just twiddle things every 10 minutes because that's going to drive everyone crazy, but where we do think, actually, we do need to make a change here, then we do when we mark it in the guidance and let you know that we've done it. And we will do that on a small number of areas over the course of this year. And finally, I'm just going to say other things we're looking at. So the big challenge here, there's many big challenges. We've got to transform the way we offer services. We've got to get the flexibility and the controls right, and they've got to go hand in hand. We've got to make sure this works for all the different types of farms. If there's anything I've learned in my 4 years in this role, it's that there are no 2 farms that are the same. And if you're farming a small upland farm, then what you're looking for in a scheme is obviously going to be very different to a large arable operation or a horticulture operation or a poultry operation, for example. So you've got to make sure this works for small farms, for tenants, for horticulture. We've got to make sure that it works in all the different geographical settings and all the different types of farm operation and all the types of farm systems. And we've got to make sure that flexibility is working. And therefore, we've got to get the right combination of uptake of these schemes at scale and the sort of level of ambition we want to see in these schemes. So we've got freedom of choice, but we really want to encourage you to undertake the right combinations of actions, the right ambitious actions for your particular farm, join up with other farmers. And those premium prices I mentioned are one of the steps we're taking for that, but there'll be more to come on that. More rewards, more incentives for doing the right combinations of things in the right places to really get those outcomes, because we have got some very serious outcomes to achieve here for food, farming and environment. And we won't be able to do that just by saying, do whatever you want. We really need to be able to offer incentives. But what I think we've understood is, if we want you to do those things, we have to incentivize you and reward you for doing them. And that's fair, because you're running businesses, aren't you? So that's important for us to do, and we'll be keeping on working on that. So we're really keen to do this. I've met thousands of farmers personally myself now. I stopped counting when I got to 5,000. Our team are out all the time. Pretty much every working day of the year, we're out somewhere doing something like this or doing some kind of engagement to understand from farmers what they're worried about, how's it working, what do we need to do. And we're serious about that because, as I say, we can't make a success of this unless it works for you. So I'm really keen to hear your questions. I'm really keen to hear your feedback. We're always up for changing and adjusting. We do try and do that in a responsible way because obviously when we change things, it's a pain. If you just learn the handbook and we change it, that's not ideal for you. But the other alternative is to keep everything exactly as it is now, which means we can't improve anything. So you've got to find the right balance there too. So yeah, looking forward to your questions. Thank you for your time and for having me here today. But this is not your only chance. I'm dead easy to find on the internet, so follow up afterwards. Always happy to hear from farm managers and others involved in farming.